Dear listeners, I ask you to listen to the story until the very end and be sure to write a review about what you liked and what needs to be changed to make it more interesting for you to listen to my stories. Under the wings of hell. They say war is hell, but hell isn't just fire and brimstone. It has wings, and it flies at 20,000 feet over enemy territory, where the air is so thin your breath turns to ice and the sky itself tries to choke the life out of you. I know this because I was there. My name is Alex Red King, and I was a gunner on a flying fortress, the legendary B-17, in the darkest days of World War II. This is the story of the worst mission of my life. The day I saw the sky turn into a graveyard. The day I realized that sometimes the dead are the lucky ones. We took off from a base in England before dawn, the frost still clinging to the wings. Our target, a munitions plant deep in the heart of Nazi Germany. The brass said it would be a milk run. We've been told that before. Every damn time, actually. And every damn time, it turned into a fight for survival. But this time, something felt different. The air inside the plane was tight, filled with the smell of sweat and gun oil. We were packed in like sardines, each man a vital part of a machine designed to bring death from above. Johnny Slick Harrington, our pilot, sat up front, tapping the gauge panel like it was a lucky charm. To my right, Buck Taylor, our radio man, was adjusting his headset. He had a letter from his fiancée folded up in his breast pocket. Said he never flew without it. Me? I was in my turret, hands gripping the twin .50 caliber Brownings like they were lifelines. Maybe they were. My job was to watch the sky, to scan for enemy fighters that could come screaming out of the clouds like falcons diving for prey. And on that day, they did. We were still an hour out when the flak started. Black bursts erupted all around us, the sky turning into a deadly storm of metal and fire. The plane shuddered as shrapnel ripped through the fuselage. I heard a curse over the intercom, probably Slick. He hated flak, said it was like rolling dice with the devil. I think he knew, deep down, that one day he'd roll snake eyes. Then, out of the smoke they came. Messerschmitts. Sleek, fast, and deadly. Like wolves circling a herd of cattle, they picked off stragglers first. I saw one of our boys go down in flames, the bomber's wing shearing off as if it were made of paper. No chutes, no survivors, just a fireball disappearing into the clouds. I swung my guns around and let loose, the vibration rattling my teeth. The tracers lit up the sky, streaking toward a fighter that was making a run at us. I must have hit something vital because the damn thing spiraled out of control, smoke pouring from its engine. I watched as it spun toward the earth, the pilot struggling, then bailing out at the last second. Buck hooped over the radio, but there was no time to celebrate. More were coming. Then the voice of our bombardier, Tommy Ghost Reynolds, came through the headset, strained and urgent. Engines hit. We're losing altitude. Panic tightened my throat. I looked down and saw smoke trailing from the number 3 engine. Not good. Not good at all. And that's when I realized hell wasn't waiting for us down there. It was already here, and it had us in its claws. The smell of burning fuel filled the cabin, thick and suffocating. The number 3 engine was belching smoke, and we were losing altitude faster than I wanted to admit. I gritted my teeth, knuckles white around the grips of my guns. The Messerschmitts weren't letting up. They knew we were wounded, and wounded prey never makes it far. Below us, another fortress took a direct hit. A flak shell punched through its belly, and in the next breath, it was gone, a blossom of fire and metal, debris raining down like hell's confetti. I watched in horror as 3 parachutes ballooned in the sky, but I knew it wouldn't matter. The fighters would be on them in seconds. Stay in formation. Slick's voice barked through the headset, but it was hopeless. The squadron was breaking apart, each bird struggling to stay in the air. Then I saw it. A Messerschmitt banking hard, lining up for another pass straight at us. I swung my guns hard hammering, but something in my gut told me I wouldn't be fast enough. The bastard was coming in too hot. A burst of gunfire ripped through the fuselage, and suddenly, the world tilted. The plane bucked violently, alarms blaring, metal screaming as it tore apart. I heard a sharp cry from somewhere behind me, maybe Buck, maybe Tommy, but I didn't have time to think. Then the worst sound in the world. The right wing tore off. For a split second, everything slowed. I saw the wings spiraling away, pieces breaking off as it tumbled. Then gravity took over, and we dropped. The fortress was no longer flying. It was falling. I slammed against the side of the turret. My headset ripped away. The wind howled through the open holes in the fuselage. The earth was rushing up to meet us, and I knew with cold certainty that this was it. Slick's voice, raw and desperate, cut through the chaos. "Bail out! Bail out!" I fumbled for my chute, fingers shaking. My world was a blur of smoke, wind, and fire. I crawled toward the hatch, my body fighting against the pull of gravity. Somewhere in the madness, I saw Tommy. His leg was mangled, blood pooling beneath him. His hands clutched at the floor, his mouth moving, but I couldn't hear him. I reached for him. Too late. The plane lurched again, and he was gone, sucked out into the void. The last thing I remember was the blinding light of the explosion as the fortress met the earth. Then, nothing but darkness. A violent shock ripped through me as I came to, gasping for air. My body ached like I'd been thrown down a flight of stairs, and for a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it hit me, the plane, the fall, the explosion. I was supposed to be dead. I blinked against the smoky haze, my lungs burning as I tried to take a breath. My parachute had deployed. I could feel the rough fabric tangled around me, half buried in the dirt. My ears were ringing, my vision swimming. I forced myself to move, pain screaming through every muscle as I clawed my way out of the chute's embrace. I was alive, but I wasn't safe. The wreckage of the B-17 smoldered in the distance. A blackened carcass sprawled across the earth. The air stank of burning oil and flesh. Flames licked at the twisted remains, casting eerie shadows across the ground. Somewhere in that wreckage were the men I'd fought beside, laughed with, shared my last rations with. Now they were gone. A sharp sound made me freeze. Boots moving through the grass. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't alone. I forced myself to stay still, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Through the smoke, I saw them, German soldiers, rifles slung over their shoulders, moving toward the wreckage. They were searching for survivors. For a split second, I considered running. Then I saw what happened to the last man who tried. One of the Germans barked a command, and another soldier turned, raising his rifle. A single shot rang out, and the figure in the distance crumpled like a marionette with its strings cut. No hesitation. No mercy. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to breathe slow and quiet. If they found me, I was dead. I crawled backward, inch by inch, every movement agonizing. My ribs ached, my head throbbed, but I didn't stop. The trees were close, just a few more feet, and I could disappear into the darkness. Another voice, sharper this time. Closer. I didn't think. I moved. The moment my body hit the tree lean, I bolted, pain forgotten. Branches tore at my uniform, my boots barely finding purchase in the mud, but I didn't dare slow down. The sounds of shouting erupted behind me. Then gunfire. Bullets ripped through the leaves, splintering what inches from my head. I threw myself down, rolling hard into a ravine just as the world above exploded in a hail of lead. Silence. I pressed my face into the dirt, my chest heaving. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then, finally, the voices faded. The boots retreated, and I was alone. I didn't know how far I was from safety. Didn't know if anyone else had made it. But I knew one thing. I wasn't dying here. Not today. I crawled deeper into the ravine, my body screaming with every movement. The mud was cold and thick, clinging to my uniform like dead hands trying to drag me under. My ribs felt broken, my lungs burned, and my right leg, God, I didn't even want to look at it. But I was alive. That was more than I could say for the rest of my crew. The Germans were still out there, combing through the wreckage, hunting for anything useful, or anyone still breathing. I had to move, but I couldn't afford to be reckless. One wrong step, one snapped twig, and I'd end up just like Buck, face down in the dirt with a bullet in my skull. I pressed forward, inch by inch, my fingers sinking into the wet earth. I was running on fumes, my head pounding so hard it felt like my skull would split open. My dog tags jingled softly as I moved, and I had to clutch them in my fist to stop the noise. I had no idea where I was. No compass, no map. Just trees, smoke, and the taste of blood in my mouth. But I knew one thing, I had to keep heading west. If I could make it far enough, maybe, just maybe, I'd find friendly lines. The hours bled together. My body ran on pure survival, my mind barely keeping up. Every sound made my heart jump. An owl's call, the rustle of leaves, the distant growl of an engine. The night stretched on forever, the darkness thick and suffocating. Then I heard something that nearly stopped my heart. Voices, low, rough, speaking German. I flattened myself against the trunk of a fallen tree, forcing my breath to slow. They were close, too close. Through the branches, I saw the flicker of lantern light, the gleam of metal on their rifles. 2 of them, maybe more. I gritted my teeth. I had no weapon, no way to fight back. If they saw me, it was over. One of them muttered something, and the other chuckled. They were relaxed, taking their time. They weren't expecting trouble. That was their mistake. I waited until they moved past me, their footsteps crunching over fallen leaves. Then, as silent as death, I slipped back into the shadows. I moved until my legs gave out, collapsing beneath the twisted branches of an old oak. My body was failing me. My mind was slipping. But I wasn't done yet. Then, through the trees, I saw it. A farmhouse. A single light in the window. Faint, flickering. A sign of life. It could be a trap. It could be nothing. But I had no choice. I dragged myself forward, each step in agony, each breath a battle. My vision blurred, my hands trembled. I stumbled up the small hill toward the door, barely able to lift my arm. I knocked once, twice. Then the darkness swallowed me whole. I woke up to warmth. Not the fire and metal kind, not the hellish heat of an exploding bomber, but real warmth. A blanket wrapped around me, a fire crackling nearby, the smell of something cooking. For a moment, I thought I was dead. Maybe heaven looked like an old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. Maybe angels smelled like fresh bread and would smoke. Then I tried to move, and pain lashed through my body, yanking me back to reality. I wasn't dead, but I wasn't safe either. The room was dimly lit, the wooden walls casting long shadows in the flickering glow of an oil lamp. My uniform was gone, replaced by a rough linen shirt and trousers that weren't mine. My leg was bandaged. Someone had patched me up. I wasn't alone. Footsteps creaked on the floorboards. Door opened, and she stepped inside. A woman, young, maybe mid-20s, wrapped in a thick wool shawl. Her dark hair was pulled back, strands slipping loose around her face. But it was her eyes that caught me, sharp, cautious, weighing me like a butcher deciding if the meat was worth keeping. She held a bowl in her hands. Without a word, she set it on the small table beside me. "Where am I?" My voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. She didn't answer, just pointed at the bowl. I stared at it. Broth, dark, steaming, with chunks of bread floating in it. My stomach twisted. I hadn't realized how hungry I was. Still, I hesitated. I didn't know if she was a friend or just someone waiting for the right moment to turn me in. She must have seen it in my face because she exhaled sharply and muttered something in German, something that sounded suspiciously like idiot, before taking a spoonful of the broth and sipping it herself. Not poisoned. I took the bowl, drank. The warmth spread through me, chasing away the cold that had settled in my bones. "Thank you," I rasped. She didn't reply, just watched me. Then finally she spoke. "You are American?" Her accent was thick but understandable. I nodded. 8th Air Force. Her jaw tightened at that, like she knew what that meant. Like maybe she had a reason to hate me. I tensed, ready for her to shout, to call someone in, to pull a knife from her apron and end this right here. But she didn't. Instead, she just said, "Sleep," and walked out of the room. I stared at the door long after she left, listening to the silence of the house. I was still alive. For now. The next few days blurred into a haze of pain, rest, and cautious silence. The woman, her name was Marta, spoke little. She moved around the small farmhouse with quiet efficiency, tending to the animals outside, keeping the fire low, always glancing toward the window as if expecting someone. She never asked about the war. Never asked what I'd done, how many bombs I'd dropped, how many lives had been shattered below. And I never asked about her. I didn't know if she had family, if she was waiting for someone to come home, or if she was just another soul caught between two monstrous machines grinding the world to dust. But one thing was clear, she wasn't planning to turn me in. One evening, as I forced myself to stand and test my leg, she finally spoke more than a few words. "You cannot stay here." I nodded. I knew that. Sooner or later, someone would come knocking. German soldiers, neighbors with loose lips, someone looking for food or shelter. And if they found me, they'd kill us both. "I need to get west," I said, my voice still raw. Marta shook her head. "Too dangerous. Roads watched. Soldiers everywhere." My gut twisted. I had hoped stupidly that I could just slip away under the cover of darkness, find my way to friendly lines. But if she was right, and the Germans were tightening their grip on the region, I wouldn't make it 10 miles before I was caught. She hesitated, then sighed. "There is another way." My pulse quickened. "What way?" She turned toward the window, staring out at the vast darkness beyond. "A man? He helps people like you." I didn't like the way she said it. Like it cost her something just to admit it. "Where is he?" "Far," she said simply. "You must be strong enough to walk." I clenched my fists. I wasn't strong enough yet, but I would be. The next night, she woke me just before dawn. A small bundle of food, a thick coat that didn't fit quite right, and an old rifle with only a few rounds. "We leave now," she whispered. And just like that, I was running again. We moved through the woods, keeping to the shadows. My leg throbbed with every step, but I didn't complain. Couldn't. Marta walked like she had done this before. Silent, purposeful, always scanning the darkness. Hours passed. The cold gnawed at my bones. Then, suddenly, voices. We hit the ground just as two German soldiers stepped onto the path ahead, their breath visible in the freezing air. Marta didn't move. Barely breathed. The soldiers muttered to each other, laughing at some private joke. Then one of them turned toward us. My grip tightened on the rifle. I knew I wouldn't get both of them before they cut me down. Marta exhaled softly. Then, before I could react, she stood. My heart stopped. The soldiers jerked in surprise, rifles raising. She spoke, fast and confident, in perfect German. I didn't understand much, but I caught the word Schweinpig. She was scolding them, like a mother catching her son sneaking out after dark. For a terrifying second, no one moved. Then, unbelievably, the soldiers chuckled. One of them muttered something about women being too loud, and they walked off. Marta stood frozen till their footsteps faded. Only then did she turn to me, her face pale in the moonlight. "Move," she whispered. We didn't stop until dawn. By the time we reached the man Marta spoke of, I was barely standing. He was older, with sharp eyes and a scar across his cheek. He didn't ask my name. Didn't ask if I was worth saving. He just looked at Marta, then at me, and said one word. "Come." I followed him into the dark. Marta didn't. I turned, confusion tightening my chest. She shook her head. "I stay." I wanted to argue, to ask her why, after all this, she wasn't coming too. But I saw it in her face. She had already made her choice. So I did the only thing I could. I nodded. "Thank you," I said. She didn't smile, just turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees. I never saw her again. Months later, after I was smuggled across enemy lines, after I made it back to England, I asked about her. About a woman helping downed airmen in occupied territory. There were whispers, stories. A woman who had been caught helping the enemy. A farmhouse burned to the ground. A body found in the woods. I never knew if it was her. I never wanted to know. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I still see her standing there, wrapped in that shawl, watching me go. And I wonder if she ever made it home.